Hi there, I'm Captain Tyler Capella and welcome to my Waterman's Way channel. So today we're going to be talking about my favorite type of fishing in the entire world, and that is sight casting to big tarpon on the beach. In my opinion, there is nothing more exciting than watching a big tarpon come up and eat your bait and go exploding out of the water and the crowd goes wild. So we're going to talk about what to look for, how to find them, do's and do nots, how to rig up for them, and everything in between. So if you like what you see, like and subscribe to my channel, and let's jump right into it. Here we go, baby. Beach fishing tarpon. Boom.
That's a big fish, bro. No wonder he's fighting so hard. Oh my God, look at that thing. Woo! That's a big fish, bro. Oh, look at that. That's the biggest one of the year if we can land her. Let's go.
All right, so there's really two things that you need to think about before you even get out on the beach and start looking for fish. The first one is make sure your tackle is ready to go. So I talked about this exact setup. This is the ideal setup for fishing the beach in a previous video. How to catch big tarpon, part 1, the rod and reel. So I showed you how to rig it, what line to use, the hooks and all that stuff. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. This is the exact setup that you need to go catch big tarpon on the beach. Make sure your knots are good, make sure your hook is on there, because if you turn the corner and there's a school of fish, then if you're not rigged up, you're just gonna watch them swim on by while you're fumbling around panicked, trying to get that bait in the water. All right, so making sure that your tackle is ready to go is of the utmost importance. That's number 1. Now, number 2 is making sure that you have some good bait on board. Now, there's basically 3 types of crabs that we use. That's a purple swimmer crab, a red pass crab, or a small blue crab is excellent in certain situations, and then 2 types of bait fish, and that is a threadfin herring most of the time, and then also a pinfish works great some of the time as well. Now sometimes with tarpon, all they want, even a 200-pound tarpon, all they're going to hit is a crab, a little purple swimmer crab that's about that big. Now other times it's a giant threadfin herring that is freaking out and floundering around on the top, and unfortunately for us humans, they are the ones that decide that. Now there are some rules, general rules, where it says, like, I would use crabs on an outgoing tide on the beach and bait fish on an incoming. Now, of course, they'll hit a crab on the incoming tide and they'll hit a bait fish on the outgoing tide, but in general, that's going to give you the highest percentage to get a bite. If you're only fishing once a week or once a month, it's good to have a smorgasbord out there. And again, follow that rule of outgoing tide, use a crab, incoming tide, use a bait fish, and that'll at least get you started. If they turn it down, switch it up and see what happens, but that'll get you going. Now to rig a bait fish, so a nice frisky live bait fish, a big threadfin herring or a pinfish, we usually will use a cork is the way to go. And the reason for that, not only is it a strike indicator, but even more importantly than that, it kind of anchors the bait. So depending on where the fish are, I like to use a long leader with the bait fish, 10, 12 feet. You're gonna have to whip the thing around, make sure the cork is straight back, and then make a cast. Not that easy to do, but a long leader with the cork and a bait fish is the way to go, because what happens is that cork is sitting there anchoring the bait fish. So he's gonna be swimming around being pulled by this cork a little bit, and it's gonna keep that bait fish right in the school. Now, if you don't have a cork, that bait fish sees the school of fish and he's just gonna take off and keep going, and he's gone. Now, he might get a bite, but that cork is gonna keep him, like, he's gonna feel the weight of the cork and then turn around back into the fish, and he's gonna be running around from him pinned, and a lot of times that will get him fired up and get you a bite when an uncorked bait wouldn't. Now for a crab, I generally will use a smaller cork like this. So again, that cork, you really, it is a strike indicator, but you really want to use it more as a bait placement tool. Sometimes that tarpon will hit the bait and you won't see your cork go down for 3-4 seconds. So you want to immediately get on that fish because they may feel the hook and spit it out. So just be paying attention. But this smaller cork here is what we're used for the crabs, basically. They don't have enough force to pull the thing down. It's a bit stealthier, and it's great when the fish are a little bit more spooky. Now, if the fish, you'll kind of see where the fish are riding in the water column. If they're coming up and they're rolling like this and they're rolling real hard, they're generally on the bottom, coming up, getting a breath of air, and they're going back down to the bottom. Now, if you see the tarpon are rolling like this, they're going to be right on the surface. So you can tell a lot about how a tarpon rolls, whether it's like that or whether it's like that, where he is in the water column. And then eventually, if you can see the fish, obviously you'll know if they're riding low or riding high. So if they're riding high in the water column and you're using a crab, we'll take get some line out here. We'll take this cork, and I mean, I'll put the crab like less than 2 feet under the cork, like that far. Sometimes if they're right, you'll see them tipping on the surface sometimes, and you want that crab to be right in their face. Boom, so there's no time for them to hesitate or look for it. Now, other times they're down a little bit lower, you can kind of just adjust that cork accordingly. And one thing that I do also, which is great when you're using a small little crab, especially, is I'll take a size 1 split shot, biggest one you can get, and pin that cork with the split shot. I even put 2 of them sometimes. The crab's really small. That way you can still get a lot of weight on the cast and get it out there. Because sometimes when we're using a crab that's this big with a 5/0 hook, you can't really cast it very far. Putting either 1 or 2 split shots on there will still allow you to get a nice long cast and reach out there and touch the fish when you otherwise wouldn't be able to. All right, so now that you have your rigs fully ready to rock and you've got plenty of good bait on board, it's time to go out there and actually find some tarpon out there on the beach. Now, to do this consistently, you need to know about their movements and some of their migration habits. I actually have an entire video solely dedicated just to the life cycle of tarpon, because it is mind-blowing what it takes for a little tiny tarpon larva to become a giant 200-pound monster. So go check that video out if you're interested. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to talk about when they have already arrived in our area, in my area, which is the Tampa Bay and southwest coast of Florida area. So normally they get here in late April through about July is when we fish them on the beach. Some are a little before and some are a little after, but for the purposes of this video, we're talking about May, June, July. Now, once you get a big push of fish into our area in, say, early May or so, the moon phase is extremely important, whether it's the full moon or the new moon. So what tends to happen is, as long as the weather is stable, the fish will kind of get into a routine and do the same thing on the same tide leading up to that moon phase. And then right on the moon phase, they will have a mass exodus where literally thousands of tarpon from the same area that have been doing the same exact thing in the same tide every single day leading up to that moon, they will all go offshore all the way to the continental shelf and spawn. And then the next day, they all come back. Now that's 120 miles out. So every moon phase kind of shuffles the deck, and then you'll get this new batch of fish that comes in, and they move around within that area. Now for the beach, what that means is they generally will move away from the big passes. They'll move up the beach on the incoming tide, generally, away from the passes. And then as the tide's going out of those passes and is streaming down the beach, they swim back into the current and they go towards the passes to feast on all the crabs that are going to be flowing out of there. So incoming tide, they're swimming away from the pass. High tide, they'll kind of be stationary, and then as soon as it starts to come out, they're going to go back towards the pass. So knowing those general movements of the fish will really help you select a starting area. Now, once you're in that area, there's always some areas that are like shoals or points or jetties, piers, things like that, that will create a pinch point where the tarpon are going to eventually come by and become more concentrated. If they're closer to the beach and you have a jetty right here, obviously they're going to have to go out and swim around the jetty, or if they're a quarter mile offshore, they're going to have to swim around that same point. So it's like a funnel for the fish, and that should give you a good clue of where you want to sit and wait for the fish to come by. All right, so once you've finally selected your spot and you're in a good area, you're ready to go, the next skill you'll need is to be able to see the fish. I'm talking about seeing them swimming through the water. Anybody can see them roll, but seeing them actually swim through the water is an art form that us guides have kind of developed over decades of experience. So to get yourself in the perfect position, you want to be up as high as possible on your boat, whether it's a polling platform, up in the tower, or a Yeti cooler on your deck, to elevate yourself so you can see down into the water. That's going to help you tremendously. Any elevation is key. And then get yourself, of course, an awesome pair of polarized sunglasses. You know, on the inshore waters, the best polarized sunglasses you can get are the green mirror with an amber lens. There's so much green light reflecting off the water in our inshore waters. A green mirror is going to reflect that back and give you maximum visibility. All about the shades, baby. The blue is really more for an offshore game. Now you can use a gray mirror with a yellow lens. That's going to brighten everything up if it's kind of a cloudy day. But day in and day out, if you're going to have one pair, green mirror with the amber lens is the way to go. And get yourself up high and see into the water. Now the next thing is, you know, you want to be able to also read the water, because say late in the day or first thing in the morning, the tarpon may not be visible. Even, 6:30 in the morning, there's almost no light. You're not going to see the fish swimming. So you're looking for signs, not only the fish rolling, weird ripples on the surface of, like, they might be swimming right under the surface and they're pushing a little bit of a head wake, or, they do this thing called daisy chaining where they swim in a circle. It's something they commonly do. And whether it's 10 fish or 200, they're doing this in one spot. It's going to kind of create this whirlpool action, and you'll actually see a little bit of a slick wherever they are in the middle of that little daisy chain. And there's something just caused that slick. It's these little subtleties like that. If you see anything different, to go stare at it for a minute and see if you notice anything come up and roll or tip the surface, see their fins ticking out. It pays to be very, very observant out there. Now, a trick to find rolling fish, which is the most obvious way to find a fish out there on the beach.
All right, instead of some fancy graphics, I'm gonna ask you to use your imagination here for a second, okay? So imagine this is the beach. There's a school of tarpon out over the sand in maybe 6 to 10 feet of water, and then the water line is right here, right? So first thing in the morning, that sun is gonna be shining this way. So what I would do with my boat is come right along the beach as close as I can get, right off of that first drop off, and be looking out this way. So that way, if one of these tarpon comes up and rolls like this, the sun is gonna be reflecting off their silver body, and I'm gonna be able to see that big time. Now, afternoon, obviously, it's the opposite. You want the sun at your back, you can be over here looking towards the beach. But first thing in the morning, right along the beach, creeping along like this, and then once I see them, I'm not just gonna freak out and go right towards them. Oh my God, there they are. No. What you wanna do is figure out which way they're going, go take the time to set up properly, go sit in front of them like this. Now, if these fish are sitting right there, the best place you can possibly be is probably about right here, off to the side and casting towards the fish to about right there. So the first thing that fish sees, boom, is the bait. You're not lining the fish at all. The first thing they're gonna see is the bait. Now, the most frustrating mistake that I see people do over and over and over again out here that drives me crazy. I'm out here on the beach, and here comes a guy, he sees a tarpon. Oh my God, there's tarpon. Boom. Comes right behind him like this and starts bombing casts over the school. And I'll start just chasing him with the trolling motor on high, right? So the problem with that is, if you're throwing it right here, you are lining the entire school before they even see the crab. They're gonna see your line first and your leader first before they even see the bait. And they're gonna start spooking and running around. And then all you're doing is just chasing the tarpon down the beach, pissing them off all the way down. So the best thing to do is just take a deep breath, go around the school, and get that angle where you're casting back to them like this. Anything more than perpendicular here is bad, right? You want to be up here and casting to them like this, so that the first thing that they see is the bait, and that is the way to go. If you're chasing them like this, that is straight up Guggen material, and you're just going to be spooking these fish all the way down the beach, ruining the fishing for yourself and everybody else. So go get in front of the fish.
So just remember, when you're out there fishing the beach, it doesn't matter if you're fishing that line of fish swimming down the beach, a daisy chain and pod, or a blob that's just creeping. Getting in front of those fish with ninja-like stealth and then setting your baits out well before they get there to have that school swim into your baits after they're set is how you get bit. One good cast is way better than 20 or 30 bad casts every single time. All right, now we got to talk about fighting the fish properly on the beach. It's a little bit different than everywhere else, right? So you've made that perfect maneuver to get in front of those fish, you made a good cast, and you get a bite. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. The fish goes ballistic. Now it's time to fight. So initially, I use a pretty light drag. I've found that a lighter drag will actually get you a higher land percentage than if you're using a real heavy drag to start off with. Now, over time, during the fight, I'm going to slowly increase the drag pressure on that fish until it's really tight towards the end of the fight, when he's kind of, you beat him down that way. But initially, it doesn't matter how tight your drag is, that fish is going to go ballistic, especially a big one, right? So he's going to explosively jump out of the water and shake his head like that. Well, think about what happens when you're snagged on a dock, right? What do? You go like this, bam, 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 and try and get that thing off of there, right? So if your drag is loose when you're doing that, it's gonna stay in the dock. But if it's tight, you got a much better chance of either pulling the hook straight or popping that hook out of there. If that tarpon jumps away from you and shakes his head crazily, there is no way, no bowing to the, bowing to the king, which is what you're supposed to do. Throw slack into the line as much as you possibly can when the tarpon jumps. No bowing is going to help you if that tarpon just jumped 15 feet that way, right? So if you're using a loose drag, you have a much better chance of that hook staying in there. Now, as soon as the tarpon slows down, or if you have an opportunity, jumps and hits the water and is just kind of sitting there for a minute, that's when I'll grab the spool, wham, 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 and whack him a few times and try and drive that hook in there. Then he's hooked, and then he might take off on a run, but then you have a much better chance of that hook actually penetrating his mouth, and you got him, right? So initially on the hook set, it's just all you do is point the rod right at him and just reel it like a madman as fast as you can until the drag starts going out, and then slowly lift the rod and put a good bend in the rod, and then be ready for the jump. You still want to bow to him if you possibly can, but if he jumps 15 feet out of the water with a tight drag, he's going to spit it, right? So after the initial freak out, you're fighting that fish, you want to keep a big bend in the pole. If the fish is over here, I'm almost past 90 degrees if he's way out there. Come way back on him, so you're bending that fat part of the rod. That's what's really fighting the fish. And you either want to make him run or jump or gain line. If you're just sitting there kind of walking the dog and it's just slowly pulling out line, that fight's going to last forever. So you either need to be getting some back and pulling as hard as you can with a big bend in the pole, and that will make him surge and jump and use energy, which is exactly what you want. You're going to get him in a lot faster. You want to put heaviest pressure you possibly can on the fish through the entire fight. Now, if the fish runs and he's surging and you're pointed at him like this, well, guess what? A lot of times after the end of a surge, he's going to come up and jump. And if you're already pointed at him like this, there's nothing for you to bow, and you might spit the hook. So when he surges, you want to resist that urge and stay way back here. That way, when he jumps, boom, you can throw as much slack as you possibly can and bow to the king, right? It's a nice fish here.
Oh, shit.
You didn't bow.
I didn't bow.
And then as he slowly kind of gets tired and more tired, I'll tighten that drag down. Those jumps are going to become less and less explosive throughout the fight. And that's how you beat him down. That's how you beat down a big tarpon.
Woo! That's what it's all about right there, baby.
One huge mistake I see people making out there that makes the fight last way longer is thinking that they need to be right on top of the fish. Out on the beach, you really don't have to. Unless there's a million boats out there, there's no reason for you to go close to that fish. You want that fish to actually pull the boat. Use those angles. If he wants to go left, you pull him to the right. If he wants to go the other way, you pull him to the left. That way you're always trying to pull him backwards. I usually have my clients stand right on the bow, so if he's pulling him that way, he's actually pulling the bow of the boat towards the fish, and that really, really beats him down. Now, if you're sitting there in the boat and you're just following the tarpon at idle wherever the tarpon's going, you're not actually putting a ton of pressure on that fish. You want that tarpon to get way out here and pull the boat, and that's gonna really beat the tarpon down. So let that tarpon get away from the boat. Let him get 200 yards out there. It's okay, right? That's how you get him in faster. It may be scary to be way out there unless, if there's boats coming now, you gotta go get on them. But if there's not boats on him, let him pull and let him pull the boat. And then that's how you're gonna get him in much faster. It's kind of counterintuitive. You think if you stay near him, you're gonna get him in quicker, but you're actually putting less pressure if you're on top of him. So the next thing we need to talk about that's really important while fishing the beach is beach fishing etiquette, right? So 10, 15 years ago, there might have been 2 or 3 people fishing this one stretch of beach, where now there's literally 20 or 30 some days. So it's getting really crowded out there, and you got to give everybody enough space to catch a fish. Otherwise, you're just ruining it for everyone, including yourself. So just imagine you're out there in the morning, there's a guy on the beach like this. You know that the general flow of tarpon is, say the outgoing tide is coming out, the tarpon are going to be swimming this way, most of them, right? So if some guy comes over and pulls up 100 yards in front of this boat right here, well, guess what? You basically just cut him off, and that's not cool. That's a real Guggen move, and that's just not what you want to do out there. If somebody does that, they're probably not the best fisherman either, and they're going to be improperly presenting the bait to the fish anyway. So what you want to do in that situation, if somebody's already there, you'd want to go set up very far behind that guy, 300 yards or so at least, really more. If there's more space, there's not another boat out there, you want to try and get at least 300 yards is what I try and do with everybody. and not go get in front of them. If you're gonna get in front of them, I mean, go like a mile down the beach or half a mile. It's all the same fish. They're gonna be coming by. So say it's a weekend, my nemesis, right? Saturday morning, there's 100 boats out there on the beach. Every 100 feet, there's a guy trying to catch tarpon first thing in the morning. Everyone thinks you have to go out there and fish for them early. And it is true, there is a sunrise bite. However, not if there's 100 boats, one every 100 feet, absolutely hammering the tarpon. In that situation, I would just skip the beach altogether and go try and explore somewhere new, right? Go look in the bay, go look in the passes, and see if you can find a school. There may be a school of 500 fish, it's just around the corner that nobody's on yet, right? So that's a great opportunity to go kind of explore some new water, because guess what? I've caught 2-3 times the amount of tarpon in the afternoon than I have in the morning after everybody leaves, right? So after 1-2 o'clock, when the sea breeze starts to kick up, most of those guys that have fished the beach all day are already gone, but the fish are still out there, especially leading up to a moon phase. That's when the tide is going to be starting to go out and those fish fire off. So like 1 to 5 o'clock can be some of the best beach fishing around, where there's no pressure. You just have to have the boat to handle that sea breeze action and also still be able to see them. Well, that's about it for beach fishing. If I didn't cover anything, if you have any questions about anything, just shoot me a comment and I'll be happy to answer it. I'm not going to tell you exactly where I fish, but I'll be happy to answer any kind of general questions you may have. And yeah, go out there. That should give you a great start to go out there and hunt some tarpon on the beach. It's the most fun fishing you can possibly have, I think, in Florida. You know, sight fishing a big tarpon. I've got plenty more tarpon videos in my How to Catch Big Tarpon series here coming up, so stay tuned for those. We're going to talk about bridge fishing, fishing the passes, how to rig up baits, and cover every single thing I know about tarpon. So stay tuned, like and subscribe if you like the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.